Hey guys, this is Miss Ray and this is Take Miss Ray Home With You. So today we're going to jump right into it because we read chapter 5 together in class. So what did we learn so far? Jordan is already in this new place. He's set back in slavery times because he stole his grandfather's watch. This mystical watch took him back to where his great-great-great-great-grandfather Uriah Henning is, who actually takes him home. He's already met the master. The master has told him he can sleep and spend time with Uriah's family. He'll have to work in the fields with them until they can figure out who his owner is because they think he's a runaway, right? So Uriah spends the night with, Jordan spends the night with Uriah's family, and he gets to experience what life is like for them, and he gets to share what life is like for him back or in the future. So right now what we're going to do is chapter 6 and chapter 7 for our weekend homework. So we're going to shoot this in 2 separate videos, but you're going to need to complete chapter 6, which will be Friday's homework, and then chapter 7, which will be Saturday's homework, and we'll do chapter 8 on Monday. Okay? So what you need is your book. You need your book. You need something to write with, and you need paper, a notebook. Now I'm going to be reading this from scratch. The last chapters I read before I shot the video, so I'm going to be reading it with you. I want you to see the thought process. I'm going to stop, make my thoughts, and then ask you a question. So everything, we're literally doing it together, okay? So let's get started. This is chapter 6. In the dark, Jordan stumbled past the outbuildings and crept toward the back door of the big house. Then all of a sudden, the dogs tied out, back growled, and went into a barking frenzy. When Jordan heard a woman's voice yell, "Who's there?" he spun around and didn't stop running until he reached the quarters. When he entered the cabin and lay down beside Uriah, he was shaking from head to foot. Man, that was a close call. He'd forgotten about the dogs. Luckily, everyone here was still asleep. He decided to rest a while and go back later. Only next time, he'd try the front door. It was still dark when Uriah shook Jordan's shoulder. "Get up," he said. "Overseer's blowing the conker shell." Jordan couldn't believe that he'd slept through the night. Mad at himself, he realized that he had no choice now. He'd have to go back to the big house this morning and look for the watch in the master's bedroom. It might be better anyway, because he'd be able to see what he was doing. He hoped that it wasn't something the master wore every day. All of a sudden, he heard a loud, mournful sound. Curious, Jordan went to the door. Through the gray light before sunrise, he saw a tall white guy in a big straw hat and a muscle-bound black man walking between the cabins. The black one was blowing on something that looked like a big seashell. In the corner here, I'll show you a picture of what a conker shell looks like. The white man be the overseer, Uriah explained. We calls him Mr. Travis, and the nigger be his helper. He calls him the driver. Name's Buster. Mr. Travis saw Jordan and walked over to him. Jordan ducked inside, but there wasn't any place to hide. The overseer stuck his head in the door. "You, come here," he said to Jordan. "The master told me we'd have a new picker today. You must be the one." "You got it all wrong, mister," Jordan said. "I'm not a slave. You see, I'm here by accident. I don't even belong in this century. Where I come from, everybody's free." The overseer shook his head. "I've heard some smart-mouthed niggas in my day, but you take the prize, boy." He walked into the cabin and grabbed the back of Jordan's shirt collar. A wave of fear welled up from Jordan's toes and rose to his throat. He knew he was no match for the beefy overseer, so he didn't put up a fight. He'd have to think his way out of this instead. Everybody in the cabin froze and watched. "I'll tell you right now, boy," said the man. "If you try any more back talk, you'll get stripes on your back you won't forget, and you'll wish you ain't never been born in any century. You hear me? Don't you, boy?" Jordan swallowed the urge to answer and just nodded. As soon as possible, he'd run and hide in the woods, then sneak into the big house and grab the watch. Mr. Travis turned to Uriah's dad. "What you think of this here boy?" "He seemed a little moonstruck, sir," said Seth. "Otherwise, he'd be all right." The overseer tightened his grip on Jordan's shirt collar and pulled him out the door. "You stay with me, boy. We got business to tend to." Mr. Travis pulled him over to the driver. Jordan started unbuttoning his shirt, thinking he could duck out of it and run. But the driver saw what he was doing and slipped a loop of scratchy rope over his head and around his neck. He and the overseer led Jordan by the rope. Some 50 yards or so behind a tool shed to a thick post set in the ground, it must have been 8 feet tall. In case you never seen nothing like this in that other life you was yapping about, this is our whipping post. The overseer held Jordan while the black man took the rope off his neck and tied it around his wrist and lashed them to the post above his head. Jordan gasped and saw spots in front of his eyes. "Stay cool," he kept telling himself. "This can't be happening." The braided leather whip the overseer took out of his pocket uncoiled like a snake. He handed it over to the driver, who swung a couple of practice lashes on the side of the shed. Jordan's heart pounded. "Hear that?" asked the overseer. Jordan nodded. If they were going to do it, then just do it and get it over with. He thought of the welts on Uriah's back and of the beautiful big perch he and his dad had caught once. It flopped and wiggled on the line until he worked itself free. Maybe he could do the same. The overseer took the whip, coiled it back, and stuck it in his pocket. If we wasn't so short-handed, we would have given you 10 lashes. Ain't no sense in hobbling an extra hand. But remember this place when you've a mind to talk out of turn. And guys, I'll show you a picture of what a post actually looks like, so you have an idea of what Jordan is seeing and why he's so afraid, okay? "Here, Buster, try these on. They look too little for me." Jordan skipped ahead. While he was still tied to the post, the overseer took Jordan's shoes off and handed them to the driver. "Here, Buster, try these on. They look too little for me." Jordan kept his mouth shut, but inside he was screaming, "My Nikes! Not my Nikes!" Buster put them on and did a little dance. "Hoo-wee! Them's a little tight, but they mighty fancy, mighty fancy." Then the two of them took off Jordan's shirt. "This ought to fit my oldest boy," said the overseer. Jordan's jeans went next, then his briefs. He was standing there stark naked, wondering what next, when Buster went into the shed and brought out a burlap shirt like Uriah's. "This here ought to be about right," he said. A prison uniform, Jordan thought, but he didn't dare say anything. The two men untied his hands and held him while he put it on. Okay, now I really want to know what you guys are thinking. So Jordan has just been stripped of his shirt, his pants, his Nikes. Everything that belongs to him has been stripped away, and now he has the same burlap shirt that Uriah is wearing. And just imagine a paper bag or your pillowcase. You cut out the top and cut out 2 holes, and you're wearing a pillowcase. There's nothing fashionable about it. So I want to know, what do you think Jordan is feeling right now? Number 1, what do you think Jordan is feeling right now in this moment? He just lost everything that belongs to him, especially his shoes. And you know how we care about our shoes. He just lost his shoes, his clothes, and he's just been threatened to get whipped with a lash if he says anything else. So he can't fight back. He can't say anything. Anything he tries, they see it and they catch it. And so now, and I know in a lot of ways our clothes are our identity, and it defines who we are as a person, right? So if they stripped away his clothes, and that's basically like his identity, how do you think he feels? Because now there's nothing about him that's any different from anybody else. He's a common slave. So what do you think he's feeling? Write your thoughts. I don't want he feels sad or he feels mad. Give me actual sentences. I want at least 3 to 4 sentences. How do you think he's feeling? Number 2, what would you do if you had a watch that sent you back in time and you had a great-great-great-great-grandfather who was a slave and you wanted people to believe that you weren't supposed to be there? I don't belong here. I'm from 2016. This is 1848. I don't belong here. And they stripped you of your clothes and showed you a post and they showed you a whip. How would you feel? So, number 1, how do you think Jordan is feeling right now? And number 2, if it was you, how would you feel and how would you act? All right, so let's move on. Now, I've noticed since we've been doing these in class that you have to pause and the questions go away. So I'm going to leave the questions up as I'm reading so that it'll still be there, okay? But I'm going to keep reading. The coarse cloth itched. Then they put the rope lash on him again and marched him back to the quarters where the slaves had lined up in the front of the cabins. There must have been 50 or 60 of them. The driver took off Jordan's rope and put him between Uriah and Rabe. "That your place, boy," he said. "Don't you forget where you belongs." Belong? No way, man, Jordan thought. Then the overseer asked about a slave who was missing. "Where's Thaddeus?" "Sir," said a woman with a blue bandana tied around her head, "he got the fever bad." "He was working yesterday," said the overseer. "He be working, sir, but he feel bad all day. And last night he had the misery with the fever and the shakes. He ain't fit for work, sir." "Well, we'll see about that." The overseer went into the cabin to check on Thaddeus. Jordan thought about playing sick, but if he did it right now, it would look like he'd gotten the idea from Thaddeus. Maybe he'd try it later. Jordan, so hungry that he could have eaten a bear, wondered if he'd missed breakfast. Uriah's mom was carrying a greasy cloth bundle. Jordan hoped it held something to eat. While the slaves waited for the overseer to come out of Thaddeus' cabin, Buster handed each of them a heavy roll of coarse cloth. "What's this?" Jordan asked Uriah. "Cotton sack," he said. Jordan started to unroll it. "Don't do that now," Uriah said. "It'd be too big. Won't be time to roll it back up before we walk to the field." And I'll have a picture of what a cotton sack looks like over here. Mr. Travis came out of the cabin shaking his head and said, "Thaddeus won't be coming, so the rest of you will have to work extra hard to take up the slack." With the overseer at the head of the line and the driver behind them, Jordan marched with the others in twos to the field. The slaves sang. Uriah whispered to Jordan that the songs were about freedom, but the overseer either didn't listen to the words or didn't care. Once in a while, Mr. Travis cracked his whip on the ground. Jordan decided it was just to scare them. As far as Jordan could see, the land was dotted white with cotton plants in bloom. It was a pretty sight, like nothing he'd ever seen before. The balls of cotton bursting out all over the tall plants looked like tufts of fluffy snow. The plants had zillions of branches and some were as tall as the grown-up's waist. Buster, the driver, came up to Jordan and told him that he would be working on the same road with Uriah's mom. He called her Clara. "You pick this side and Clara, she picked the other," he said. "And you best keep up, cause she be the fast pickers. She be one of the fast pickers. If you lags behind, you gets the whip. So you best make your fingers fly." He studied Jordan as he unrolled the cotton bag. Jordan stared at it in disbelief. It must have been 10 feet long and had a strap loop on one end. He saw that Clara had slipped the strap over her head and across her shoulder, so he did the same. The bag opened at his side. Just above his waist on Clara, it opened chest high. "You ever picked cotton before?" asked the driver. "No, sir. I didn't think so," he said. "We're going to be watching you, boys, so you best catch on quick if you don't want a right smart whipping." He nodded to Uriah's mom. "Clara, you tell him what he need to know." He walked back to where the overseer stood. The slaves near Jordan were going after the cotton with both hands and slipping it into their bags with lightning speed. To Jordan, it didn't look that hard. "Now, Jordan," Clara said, "let me see you pull the cotton out of the pod there." She calls it the bowl. We calls it the bowl. Jordan sighed the way he always did when Mom preached at him. What did she think he was? Some kind of an idiot? He'd show her that any dummy could pick cotton. He grabbed at the cotton boom and yanked it. The bowl holding the cotton came off. So did a branch with unopened bowls. "Lord Almighty, what you think you doing?" she whispered. "If Buster or the overseer caught you doing that, you'd get the whip for sure. Just for that? You pull off the bowl with the cotton and a branch full of bowls that ain't open yet." In one easy snatch, she plucked the cotton out of the bowl and put it in Jordan's sack. Then she stooped down and buried the bowl and broken branch in the loose dirt by their dusty bare feet. "What are you doing that for?" Jordan asked. "We can't let Buster and Mr. Travis see what you done tore off." She nodded at the two huge wicker baskets at the start of the row. "The one on that side's mine, and the one on that side's yours. When your sack is full, you emptied it in your basket. The overseer, he weigh it at sundown, and if it don't weigh heavy enough, you gets a whipping." Jordan didn't believe they'd go that far. This stuff was light as air. Well, he was on to that old scare the new kid trick. This was probably just like what the overseer was doing when he and Buster slapped that whip in front of him and didn't end up using it. Yeah, they probably made her tell him that. But then he couldn't quite chase away the memory of Uriah's scars. "You hurry along now, boy," Clara said, "'cause we got to do this whole row before nightfall." Jordan squinted into the distance, but couldn't make out the end, just tons of cotton fading out of sight. "You better get busy, boy, 'cause that's all a good hand can do in a day." Jordan pulled at the fluffy white stuff, and often as not, the bowl came off in his hand. He seldom bothered to take the cotton out and just tossed the whole thing in his bag. They probably had a way of cleaning it, so what difference could it make? Besides, the bowls could make the cotton weigh more. He noticed that the bag hanging from his neck kept swinging from side to side when he walked, leaving a trail of broken low branches. He tried to keep an eye out for some way to skip out and steal the watch, but whenever he looked up, Buster right nearby, staring at him. The sun rose higher and soon he was boiling hot. Sweat ran down his forehead into his eyes. His empty stomach growled, and he was so thirsty that he could have given his right arm for a cold bottle of Coke. "Do you have anything to drink?" he called out to Clara. She was several yards ahead of him by now, plucking the white stuff with both hands and tossing it into her bag. She looked up but never stopped working. He could see that her bag was filling up while his own was still nearly empty. "The water boy be coming soon," she said. He worked on in the boiling heat. A little later, a small boy who couldn't have been older than 6 or 7 walked toward him, half dragging a heavy bucket. "You needs a drink?" he asked. So this was the water boy. Jordan hesitated to drink from the dipper he offered. How many mouths have touched that thing? But his thirst quickly overcame his disgust, and he drank eagerly. The water was warm and not very refreshing, but at least it was wet. He was monstrously hungry, and it wasn't long before he was thirsty again, too. Would the water boy come back? He was nowhere to be seen. Jordan felt dizzy from the heat. He didn't realize what was happening when he saw dark spots in the front of his eyes. Then everything went black. The next thing Jordan knew, he was lying in the dirt, and the overseer was standing over him, whacking him with the whip. At first, he was too surprised to feel the pain. "What you doing, boy? Laying down on the job?" "I must have passed out," he said. "We don't have time for fainting around here, boy. You better get up and go at it if you know what's good for you." When Jordan got up on his knees, the whip cracked across his back again. Jordan gasped at its fiery sting. "Up, boy, all the way up! And I want to see the basket full by nightfall, or you're going to be mighty sorry." As Jordan staggered to his feet, the overseer opened the boy's bag and looked inside. "What do you mean, boy? Throwing the bowls in the cotton? And you broke branches? Don't you know that broke branches is dead branches, and dead branches don't give no cotton?" For that, Travis gave him another lash. By that time, Jordan was crazy with pain. Blood ran down his legs, and he was so angry that he wanted to grab the whip and make the overseer feel even worse than he did, but he didn't dare. The man would probably kill him. There had to be laws against this kind of treatment. "I'm going to tell the police on you," he blurted out. Travis laughed. "You ain't going to get nowhere with our sheriff, boy. He don't like lazy niggas and just as soon shoot you as not. Jordan hated that man. How dare he call him that? Pain fired his rage. He stared at Travis, and Travis stared back, then walked off. Angry as he was, there wasn't a thing Jordan could do but then just go out and pick cotton. He knew that if he ran for the big house, he'd get caught, and worse. Whew, this was actually a really good chapter. They've all been really good. So, Jordan is now went from sleeping with Uriah's family to now he's working with their family. But he quickly saw that his old ways and the way he used to get down did not work. Do you think it was Uriah's fault? Number 3. Do you think it was Uriah's fault that he fainted? I mean, Uriah's young. He's 12 years old. So he's never worked before, right? He's 12. He's never done manual labor. And we don't know if he has to do chores or anything like that. But it doesn't compare to standing in the boiling sun. So do you think Jordan brought it on himself that he fainted in the sun? And number 3, how do you think he felt when he felt that first whiplash? Because when that whip, and he got whipped a few times, it doesn't tell us how many, but he got whipped at least 5 times, and then he got it on the back. So now he knows what Uriah feels like. So, what do you think, or do you think he can relate to Uriah now? Because at first they were 2 very completely different types of people. But now that he's been whipped, he's lost, well, let's back up. Now that he's had to sleep where Uriah has slept, he's had to eat what Uriah has eaten, he is now dressed like Uriah, and now he's doing the same work as Uriah. So do you think that he can relate more to Uriah now? If yes, tell me how. If no, tell me how. Don't just write yes. Don't just write no. Give me an explanation. So if you think he can relate to Uriah and you say yes, tell me why. If you say no, tell me why. Don't give me lazy answers. So that's it for chapter 6. Answer those questions and then we'll move on and I'll see you at chapter 7. Bye.